is October 18th. It's a Tuesday, 6 p.m. And we're going to open our workshop this evening with the charter amendments. And we're going to begin with resolution number 2021-4. And this is, in short, talking about establishing a code of conduct for all town elected and appointed officials, as well as employees of the town. So, council members and mayor, in front of you, you have 2021-4. And I guess we can start on page 2, since page 1 is all the whereas stuff.
Take part of those, please.
And we are,
Suggested changes.
oh, okay. Chapter 13-1, applicability.
I think I understand this, but just to confirm, the first sentence under C13-1, it says, the second line, of the town, all of its employees and any person appointed to a board. So employees means staff as well as appointed people like the police chief, the town administrator, et cetera. It's everybody, right? Okay.
That's how I read it.
Yep.
Yeah. Anybody, yeah.
So I think the reason for the board is, if we're talking about Board of Appeals or the Recs and Parks Board, and then you got to cover all the commissions and then any task force. So I'm good. I'm pretty good with that.
Can I just give a overall statement?
Sure.
And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. We can go through this thing and that's all fine. I'm just concerned that we're opening up a big box where we're going to have to get, first of all, we don't have a code of conduct, so we're going to have to develop one. We don't have one currently. It'd be nice to have one so that we know where we're going prior to passing this, or at least have a draft of it to know where we're going. But the sense that we're going to have to go to every employee, right down to the code enforcer and a part-time grass cutter, just seems to me that perhaps this code of conduct could be something that we're opening a big policy item that is going to require a lot of oversight, and I'm not sure that's a good idea. Having said that, if you all do, then fine.
Question for Tom. So requiring everybody to sign a code of conduct piece of paper, is that legal to be able to do that? Can you do that?
I think so, yes. Now, what's in the code of conduct, there might be some things that you could envision that somebody might put in there that you would not be lawful and require somebody to sign. It does, it's a little tricky though, because you have people who are already employed. So let's assume you have somebody that says, well, I'm not signing that. I don't believe I need to, I conduct myself ethically, whatever. Are we going to fire these people? I mean, that would be my only question.
Yeah, and that actually comes up later on in a sentence that says a refusal to do so may have that employee terminated from town employment. The word may leaves a lot of vagueness, and I mean, that's where I'm tripping up.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is this has to do with candidates for office and they're immediately disqualified. You know, I guess you could disqualify them, kind of like you do if they fail to provide the disclosure requirements and all of that. The only thing I might say is, rather than going through the administrative hoop of having people sign a code of conduct, if you want a code of conduct, just enact it. Make it an ordinance, or I probably wouldn't put it in a charter as specific as all of this.
Yeah.
But say by ordinance, as we do the ethics. The ethics is kind of a code of conduct. It might not be as specific as you want this to be, but you could certainly enact an ordinance that says this is from this day forward.
Everybody needs to, elected and non-elected and
Clarify.
employees need
You know,
to.
You probably wouldn't say you didn't expect this before, but, you know, you just, you know, if you want somebody to adhere to it, just make it an ordinance. Rather than have these, you know, the signature now. Again, I don't know what's supposed to go in here. Is it stuff that's kind of like, you know, the employee handbook? Where you do, you know, kind of have them sign to say, yeah, I've received it, and I agree to abide by these policies, you know, or, you know, I don't know quite what they are, but, you know.
Well, I mean, this does lay out the topical areas that the code of conduct needs to contain when it's created, so it does say that. But that is an interesting approach of just putting it in an ordinance.
The code itself, you mean, or whatever, the document?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Probably in the ethics chapter, maybe,
Yeah,
or maybe
I mean,
separate
it's-
code of conduct.
Yeah, I think when I drafted this, it was just more that we would be required to develop one. I know it would be specific, and really a charter should not have a lot of specifics in it. So if it goes under the ethics chapter, that's fine, as long as we're required to develop one and has some of these three principles in it.
Right, yep.
So let me give a comment on this, and it kind of dovetails into amendment number 5, because the two kind of are the yin and the yang. So this is saying, this is the way we want you to behave, and this is the way we encourage you to behave. And then the next one, 21-5 says, and you can't be retaliated against for these things. And so if we're going to put the code of conduct in an ordinance, then we're basically saying we're going to take the retaliation part and put that in an ordinance too. The second point I want to bring up, and this is my big point, and I was handing out versions of this at previous meetings, and I've changed the wording, but my whole thing is, when we get, and it pertains to code of conduct, but more so the retaliation. The retaliation one really focuses on being retaliated against for bringing up ethics violations. And to me, if we're going to write this, it should be about getting retaliated against for saying lots of different kinds of things. So my point is, as an employee, this is my big point, you should be able to raise issues about a town practice or a policy or procedure. You think there's a safety issue. We should actually encourage our employees to identify those things if they see something that they think is wrong. And then if it's not addressed through the system and they start getting retaliated against, they're not getting a promotion, their manager's saying, just go sit in the corner, it's not a problem. They have to have protections against that. So if we're going to do this, my big policy issue is we can't just address ethics. It has to address other concerns or issues that an employee brings up. So that's more so in 5, but even in the code of conduct, I think it comes into play. So that's what I'd be looking for in these.
Well, remind me to bring something up when we come to 5. I think I got to ask Tom, I know we just redid the ethics, or there might be something coming, because I think the state now requires, we did do some, but I can't remember exactly if it covered everything Councilman Demota just said.
I don't remember.
Me neither. It's been,
Kind of doubt it.
okay. All right, I'm just, don't want,
So back to 4. If we're going to walk through this, I think that's fine. I had a suggested addition to, under C13-3A, adding another number, but I'll hold that till we get to it.
And if I can just make a finished comment, I do have a copy of the employee handbook here. It has a grievance procedure, everything's in there. I think that what we're doing here could go in here, but I'm perfectly fine with walking through this. But between now and the time that we actually vote on this, we may want to consider going another route. But anyway, for future consideration when it does come to a vote, just realize there is an employee handbook.
Okay.
A last quick comment on that. It's been a while since I looked through the procedures and policies, but I recall looking through them and thinking there were some gaps here and there. I do think it's important, even if they're in policies and handbooks, it's important to codify this either in these resolutions or in an ordinance. It's important to get these quote-unquote requirements in place so that they are a law of some kind.
So to keep us moving forward, whether we decide to do this as a charter amendment or a resolution, I think we can still take a look at the language. And if we decide to go the ordinance route, we can simply take the language that we're going to discuss and just sort of do a copy paste and form it into the ordinance. I think that would be okay. Being open to a charter amendment or an ordinance, excuse me. Chapter 13-2, Section A, 1, 2, and 3, talk about elected and appointed officials, which not only talks about us, but also board members, commission members, task force members as well. Keeping in mind, we don't have a code of conduct yet, so.
So with that said, I have to agree with the mayor here. How can we go through this language when we don't even have a code of conduct? Like, I feel like this should wait until one is drafted so that we understand what wording we even want to incorporate.
when you say wording, I mean, I've got 1, 2, and 3, which at least the 3 things should be or shall need to be included in the code once it's developed. It's just very general topics.
Right, no, I get that, but isn't that kind of decided what should go in it by the mayor and the town administrator when they sit down to kind of draft a code of conduct for the employees that they manage?
And who's gonna draft it? Because I think it'd be nice if we were going through this and we had a rough draft of what this code of conduct is gonna look like. And I can tell you as someone who feels like we're kind of drawing outside the lines right now, I mean, I don't know who's gonna draft this thing. I guess you guys are gonna tell me I have to. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, I would say, when I was writing and looking at other towns, I was finding stuff that was 2 pages, 5 pages, and then I found some that were like 40 pages of code of conducts. So I did not feel comfortable. Councilman DeModa would probably like that.
Let me guess that a lawyer wrote the 40-page.
I have no clue.
I guess what I would say is, like, Carl, when you drafted this, your intent was to develop a code of conduct.
Or to require the town to develop it, and until at such time, at least let these 3 guiding principles be in effect, because we have a tendency to pass stuff and then never develop the corresponding document.
Again, but I don't think that developing a code of conduct isn't a charter amendment. And I think, again, as the mayor said, a draft should be before us before we even discuss what should be in it. I mean,
Well, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I would rather get something in there that the town needs to develop the code.
well, that's an ordinance, as Tom said.
Well, no, well, it's in the charter because we could just say the ordinance never gets developed or push it off, but at least it's this way, the town needs a code of conduct. It's in the charter. So as long as we're working on it, I would say okay. But, I mean, it might not have to be this specific, but just say the town in the charter is a code of conduct would cover elected, appointed, and town employees, and the mayor shall develop the code of conduct.
But then you can stop at 13.1.
Oh, that's fine, yeah, I mean, that's fine. It's just as long as, I know some of the stuff was heavy-handed in it, but it's more just like, it's good to put it far out there and then move back than try to move forward from a lesser thing. And that, to be honest with you, would satisfy me. I mean, as long as we start developing the code of conduct, it says we need that code of conduct. And maybe just say like the code of conduct shall include but not limited to, because I think the wording that protects employees and members of the public. And I mean, just use those 1, 2, and 3, because they're pretty much the same in both under the -2 and -3. So, I mean, just say the wording of the code of conduct shall include but not limited to the following. So that way, at least it has those 3 guiding principles in a code. If it takes us for a while to develop the code, at least these 3 guiding principles, someone can fall back on if there's trouble somehow.
So, Mayor, to sort of answer your question, who's going to develop this? It was obviously not my intention that this body would develop it. However, thinking about the elected and the appointed officials, and not to put anything on you or the staff, but I feel like ethics might come into that section of, we all have to sign the ethics agreement. We all have to fill out the paperwork for that. But maybe the Ethics Commission may be able to develop at least the elected and the appointed officials draft of the code of conduct, where then you, in coordination with the town administrator and probably HR, could sit down to develop maybe the employee code of conduct. I was just kind of thinking out loud while I was listening to everybody else.
Yeah, that's, if this indeed passes, then I agree that would be about the way that it would unfold. It would be staff and maybe the Ethics Commission. I do think that, we're diving into, I know logistically how difficult it is to just get the regular forms filled out for financial disclosure for volunteers, for commissions and task forces. We get it done, but it's not easy. And now you're logistically adding another piece of paper, and maybe it's not a problem, but anyway, I don't see any problem with wordsmithing our way through this thing, but I think between now and the time it comes to a vote,
Yeah,
I just hope everyone thinks about it real hard about the logistics of it.
sure.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Real quick comment, but I remember hearing Tom say if we put this in an ordinance, you wouldn't have to have everybody sign a piece of paper. It would
That
just
would be great.
Yeah,
That might be a better
Hey,
way
you have to
go.
follow the law. The law is written right here. If you don't, there are consequences.
Yeah, just remember that when it comes to a vote.
yeah. I mean, I don't mind the actual code or the code of conduct being a section of the ordinance, but we should have enabling legislation or a charter amendment.
Well, if this dies at the table, one of you can bring it back as an ordinance. That's fine.
All right, let's go ahead. So as Councilmember Munder has already previously discussed, that the general items, number 1, 2, and 3, I think he would be looking for at least, I don't know, you want to, I don't want to, I don't want to speak for you.
What I'm willing to do is say is like, after the code of conduct shall apply to elected to, keep the C13-1 to act, who it applies to, I'm tongue-tied right now, to do that one, and then maybe just add the following to it. I mean, just like, this code shall include but not limited to the following 1, 2, 3, and go from there, and just strike the rest, probably.
And Councilmember Demoter, you have a reword, or,
Well, when we get to.
oh, that was town employees.
Or maybe,
Down to
yeah,
town
hold
employees.
on, let me look at
Okay.
that, or maybe,
But I have a question on 13-2, if you're still there.
I am, we're sort of in like the 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so here's my question. So the title of 13-2 says elected and appointed officials. So this whole section should be about elected and appointed officials. We get down to number 1, and it says wording that protects town employees and members of the public. So I'm assuming what you mean there is the members of the public are the appointed officials to boards and commissions and task forces.
no,
I think it's the residents and the citizens.
yeah.
But is it also, it's also for those residents and citizens who are on a commission or a board, it applies to them too, right?
Yes.
My point is, this is under, this section is titled elected and appointed officials.
Right.
So,
Yeah. It applies to any citizen in
Okay.
town,
It says it
no
pro-
matter if they're,
protects town employees, are we writing this to protect elected officials as well? Because that's the title of your section. See what I'm getting at?
Seems miscategorized.
Yeah. And maybe it does. Maybe we want something that says, elected officials, we expect you to carry yourself in a certain way, and hopefully you are protected against harassment or something like that. I don't know. Maybe elected officials, that's a different category. I'm just looking at the structure of the document, because we get down to C13-3, and we're specifically talking about town employees, so that makes sense. I just want to make sure you get the wording right on what you're trying to accomplish in number 1. So we have elected officials on item number 2 in terms of expectations on how they should behave. That makes-
we can put in, sorry, number 2, need to pull the mic, sorry, Councilman. We could put a wording in there, wording that defines how elected officials behave when interacting with members of the public and other elected officials. Because elected officials then would cover both any and all elected officials, be it local, state, federal. I mean, basically treat each other with respect and things of that nature. I mean, we could probably put that, not respect, but like how members and interacting with members of the public and other elected officials.
Wait, we need a charter amendment so that we all treat each other with respect?
I don't think we would, what was that, Lynn?
It works so well.
What was that, Lynn?
Without any kind of, policy, it's working so
Well,
well.
well, actually, I mean, Lynn, I can send you the stuff. I mean, I was finding some other towns that would actually had that and it's like, instead of like, I want to say California, of course, California is where I pulled it from, not this wording, but one of them was like, had like, treat members of the public with respect and courtesy, and I mean, almost defines it what.
How do they enforce this?
That I need to go back, but I think that was one of the.
Word on here is enforcement ?
Yeah, I think that was the 40-page one too, so it's,
Well, you start to, and I only raise this because
yeah,
I'm
no,
not trying to interject, but just in terms of the lawyer trying to interpret and how it's going to be enforced later, who decides whether it's been violated? And then the other thing is when you start talking about the words anybody uses to each other, I mean, we can all agree that there are some things that probably shouldn't be said, but I start thinking about, okay, First Amendment issues, don't, I'm sure, if there was some disagreement about whether some response was justified or was not, the words were proper, or they were not, or the tone was not quite right, I'm sure somebody who uttered them and was the subject of whatever enforcement action there may be may say, buzz off, I've got a First Amendment right to say McCarran's full of hooey. I mean, that's, I have a right to say that. You can't strip me of my position or candidacy because of that.
Yeah. That's what I say, is like, I think it would be good just to say code of conduct, actability, if I can't pronounce that one right. Who it applies to, and just put in leave the wording there, strike everything that comes down to, except to the last one that says this code shall include but not limited to the following. Put some various wording of those 3 points in there, and then let the mayor and the Ethics Commission develop the code for ordinance for, I want to say inclusion or the creation of an ordinance. That way we have the ability as a council to review, or whoever sits here when the ordinance does get developed, to go over the code.
So I think part of my struggle is I like your, whether one is worded the right way or
Yeah.
not. 2 and 3, I think these are good ideas to give a developing commission who will be working on the code of conduct. Hey, we would like ideas that revolve around that. And then if we were to do this as an ordinance, we don't have to worry about the wording that we're trying to struggle with right now, because the code of conduct would have already been established. We can just say, hey, on this ordinance, everyone needs to follow the code of conduct. And then we can have a discussion about how, what is enforcement going to look like? Is it going to be those period reviews that David was talking about, that if they're not doing those things or whatever? I think these ideas, these revolving ideas, would be great to give to the Ethics Commission so they can say, okay, what kind of wording do we want about how elected officials should behave when interacting with members of the public? Now, some people may also say that whenever you are not acting appropriately, that the members of the public will use that for their next voting cycle, and that's their code of conduct per se. So I'm sort of, wishy-washy, because we're trying to figure out what these general ideas may be, but until we have the specific ideas, and then we don't have to worry about these general wordings about what none of us really know, because we don't want to develop the code of conduct, or at least I wouldn't want this body to be responsible for developing its own code of conduct. I think personally, until we have a code of conduct, and we can give this to, the Ethics Commission and saying, hey, we would like these general ideas to be covered. I think, for me personally, I'm struggling to just make it through what it is that we're looking at until we actually have a code of conduct. And I would love to pass it with an ordinance, but just to say, hey, we would like it to talk about behavior, we would like to talk about it, but that protects their freedom of speech. Can I say that any of us at one point, how I feel? Sure. But would I want to do that so that members of the public say, hey, Jason said this about so-and-so? I wouldn't want that to come back to me. So I would say we kind of put this on hold until, if we can come up with a date. I put a question mark with a date, when would we like the next code of conduct to be established, so that, we do have an election cycle coming up, so that if we can get a code of conduct established by May, whoever's at this table is now in charge of that code of conduct. That's what that body has to follow. That's kind of where I'm at right now, because I would love to make it through it, but I'm struggling just trying to
Yeah.
get through 1, 2, and 3. And then I would like the mayor and the town administrator to worry about the employees. That's not on this body. Does that
Gotcha.
make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes
Okay.
sense, just, what, do we need something to authorize the mayor? Sorry.
That's okay, Carl, you can finish. I was just getting my turn in line.
I'm just,
I'm going to suggest a pathway forward because I believe, and Tom can talk about this logistically, because it has been introduced and because we're, not so much because we're workshopping it, but I think this has to come to a vote. So my suggestion would be that we take this to a vote. I would think it would probably get rejected, and then we can talk about doing an ordinance. It doesn't require a form to be filled out by everybody. We can just create an ordinance, but until this dies, we're stuck in limbo land. So,
I mean, I'm not trying to, but could we, not saying you wouldn't do it, Mayor, but I'm just concerned, like, say this dies, then we develop nothing. It just dies, and no code of conduct.
I think everyone here has the understanding that we would like to have something, and,
Okay.
we're all talking about it,
Yeah, I just,
in the public. So I think with the good nature of everyone's intentions here, to say, hey, in the next, or by the election cycle of May, we would like to have an employee code of conduct, we would like to have an elected official / appointed official code of conduct, so that moving forward here on out, and sort of grandfather everybody else in. I mean, everyone, when you're sitting at this table, whether it be as a council member or as a commission member, there's some rights and responsibilities that, of how you should act. And yes, you're fighting for the public, but I think those would be the best steps. At least that would be my opinion, my point of view. But if we agree, then we can move on.
I agree.
yeah, no, I mean, I just can't, I don't feel comfortable passing a charter amendment or rewriting it saying the mayor, I want to say, I would feel a little bit more comfortable we could require us to develop something and have it, but if we're willing to, if we are all to the understanding that we need to develop something, I'm fine with letting this go by the wayside for right now.
So what I'm hearing, let's get something on record
Yeah.
at a council meeting saying, hey, we're going to assign these people. Let's make sure that we have a code of conduct by so-and-so deadline, so that we haven't just,
Yeah.
thrown this charter amendment or this work off to the side. I think when we do something, if we can get something, I'll make a note and I'll talk to Holly to see if we can get it on, just to mention it during the November council meeting.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to March, so that we can take a look at it, make revisions.
Yeah.
And I think actually probably February, so that we can make revisions and pass an ordinance would be done by May if we did February.
Okay.
yeah, the ordinance is a legislative function. It's
Yeah.
not like I'm killing this.
Oh, no, I'm not taking, no, I'm not
The only
taking,
way it would not move forward would be if you all decided not to move
Yeah.
it forward. But if you put together an ordinance and bring it, it's going to get through the wickets. So,
I mean, it doesn't matter, as long as, I want to say the cake or whatever gets made, and this is like more the code of conduct one, as long as we develop and have in place a code of conduct, be it via ordinance or charter amendment, I'm kind of okay with, and I'm willing to let it slide for right now.
I won't let you down.
All right,
I'll make a note, and we'll keep this moving forward.
yeah.
All right. So we'll slide that off, and, of course, we'll have to do a vote at the,
At a council meeting.
at the council meeting.
Council President?
Sir.
I have a request. So It sounded like under A123, under C13-2, we were saying we want to hand these to the code of conduct writers to say, these are the kinds of things we like to see contained in the code.
Best practices,
Best
general
practices,
ideas.
right.
Sure.
And then under C13-3 for town employees, it's the same thing. We want to see 1, 2, and 3. I am asking if we can also include under employees, if you look at the one pager I gave everybody,
Yep.
I would like to see this, I said new number 1, but I would like to see this thought captured as an element that should be considered in crafting the code of conduct for town employees.
Okay.
And the point here is, we're not just telling town employees, you can't do this, you can't do that, you have to act a certain way with interacting with the public and other employees. We also want to say, we expect you, we welcome you to bring up issues, concerns that may impact your safety, the safety of your fellow employees, and the safety of the public. That's part of a good organizational culture and safety culture. So I'd like to see this captured along with these other 3, if
Okay.
that can move forward.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mayor, did you happen to get a slip of paper from Councilmember Demoter? All right, perfect.
I got it here. The only thing to close this out would be, I know enforcement, we talked about it briefly, but even under the ethics portion, chapter 13 of the code, it talks about the removal of elected officials and everything, but we've had a conversation in the past where really an elected official is only removed by the people, not by anyone here. So when we do get to enforcement issues, it's going to be a little bit tricky, but we'll figure something out.
Okay. All right. Let's, if we want to, we can take a look at 5, whether this stays as a charter or as an ordinance. I think there's only 2 sections. Is that correct? Yeah.
Well, some of this might, as I said, I want to say I got to reread it, but I should have refreshed my memory on what the ethics just did for the
Yeah,
retaliation, because I know the state required us, we adopted it, and now the state's requiring us for something for MML2 or something. But I can't remember exactly what we added for retaliation under the ethics change.
When you say we added,
I mean, the town.
the town added something for ethics?
yeah, I think that the model code State Ethics Commission puts out, and that the municipalities are supposed to be consistent with, at least in terms of conflicts of interest and disclosures, put something out, and I think we did adopt something to this effect, if my memory is correct about it. But it was just a
One-liner or
just like a
something.
one-liner. It wasn't
Yeah.
very, and I'll have to dig it out to see what that was about. Now that you're mentioning it, I think it was about 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, when I was drafting it, it came out in discussions of this too, so it was like somewhere around about 1.5 to 2 years ago.
It's before I got elected.
Yeah, no, it was something to do with retaliation, elected officials against employees and stuff of that. I'm not exactly sure if what the town added to the ethics covers this or not.
Can we, is there a way, is it in E Code 360 or?
Should be by now.
Let's see if I can find it.
I only found spelling mistakes on this one.
I mean, I would have liked, I'm not, I think this should be a charter that we can't, that you can't retaliate against employees, elected or appointed. I know people would say be code or ordinance, but I just think it would be a little bit better in the charter, maybe.
is this would be new to the charter? We need to create a new article, or does it go under?
I think it's a brand-new article.
Okay. All right, so it's Article 14?
Well, if 13 doesn't pass, this will become 13, right?
Okay.
Unless we want to say reserved, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sort of, to be very honest with you, I'm leaning on doing an ordinance for
This one also.
the last one, 2021-4.
Yeah.
So a question for Tom. Well, he's multitasking. What are the advantages and disadvantages of putting this kind of content in a charter amendment resolution versus an ordinance? Is it 6 of one, half dozen of the other? Does one mean something different than the other? We giving anything up? We gaining anything?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I would say it'd be just as good, my first blush would be, it's just as good in the ordinance, in an ordinance as opposed to the charter amendment. Unless you wanted to make the charter amendment that simply enable, sort of like enabling legislation that says, town council shall do the following. My impression is that a lot of this stuff, these two in particular, probably goes under the ethics chapter to be enforced by the Ethics Commission, maybe to some degree. And I say that because one of the, I don't want to speak for him, but so I would talk to Dick about this, but my impression would be that the ethics code seems very limited. It's very focused on conflicts of interest. There may be other misdeeds that aren't quite conflicts of interest. You're not voting on something that would benefit you, but it's still, dishonest.
Yes.
It's lying, stealing, and cheating that you're going to want to very clearly spell out, and then spell out who determines that it's lying, stealing, cheating. It really occurred. It was not proper, and doles out some form of punishment, understanding that with elected officials we may be constrained as to what can be done. And I don't know, my first blush reaction is maybe a lot of this goes right into at least the code of conduct, should go in the ethics. Now, if the code of conduct is going to start to get into sort of civility, you be nice to each other, be nice, respectful and all that, that's probably not an ethics issue. But, if you get to the more tangible, thou shalt not take credit card and, buy for oneself, that kind of stuff, that's kind of stuff, if that's what you're envisioning, and that kind of stuff probably should be spelled out maybe better than it is in the ethics chapter, so that it empowers the ethics commission to do more than maybe just field conflicts of, pure conflicts of interest complaints. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the way it is. And then however, with respect to the protection from retaliation employees, that probably is not an ethics thing. That's probably merits a separate chapter or something. And the other thing, my limited experience as a lawyer dealing with some of these types of things is be thinking about as well, okay, what's the process by which we have a grievance process in the manual? Maybe that's not sufficient in a given case. My limited understanding is sometimes these systems, create ombudsman, sort of this independent, where somebody can go and feel safe to complain to, and they, and then kind of my last sort of word of caution was make sure everything's integrated, because you want that consistent with this, and so that you don't get down the line in a dispute where somebody says, well, wait a minute, I followed that procedure, not this one. You just want to make sure it's all integrated. So that's kind of my 2 cents, just from knowing how these things are done typically.
So
In a typical lawyer response, he did not answer your
well,
question.
I actually thought of a response technically, not that it's an issue, but the charter amendment resolutions, these cannot be vetoed by the mayor.
True.
An ordinance can be vetoed by the mayor. Not that you would want to veto any of this, but that is a technical difference.
Yes.
My issue, this is where I'm coming from for all the elected officials here. I'm really big on this concept of, if we're going to talk about retaliation, it can't just be about ethics. Ethics is such a narrow little box. We need to put protections in place for employees so that they are not retaliated against for bringing up harassment issues, for bringing up safety issues, or any kind of concerns that they feel like aren't getting addressed. So that, to me, has to be somewhere, and you can't put that in the ethics chapter. It has to go somewhere else. And to your point, Tom, about the ombudsman and such, this is why, when I first brought up this concept, I talked about an employee concerns program that does X, Y, Z. And you just say you need a program. You don't spell it all out. And then what the town would do is you'd look at your handbook and your policies and procedures, see what might be missing there, and you make sure you have a program, however cobbled together, that has that. And then to your last point, employees need a place to go when they can't get their issue resolved through the normal channels. So there might need to be an ombudsman or somebody that's on retainer that, if it has to get to that level, it goes to somebody else who's non-biased. So for all those reasons, I just really want to see this employee protection piece from retaliation. It has to go somewhere.
Looking at your edits, Councilman, it looks like you're suggesting a new 3 and a new 4 that focus more closely on the employees with the town's policies and practices in regards to the impact of safety and the health of employees.
Correct.
And then 4, concern or complaint.
Yeah.
Is that the same?
Wait, I
public.
took the wording out of 1 and 2.
Oh, in a hearing, investigation or hearing.
Yeah, so
I
if there's somebody
apologize.
who's helping out and testifying or
Okay,
corroborating this person's views, they're not harassed in any way.
I gotcha.
And I followed the language that's already here, just
Yep,
not for ethics, but for these other topics.
okay.
I mean, what you're bringing up, Councilman Demoda, I can agree with. It just needs to be applied to the ethics only chapter, but other things, yeah. But would this work? I guess I want to say, if we're, as you said, I think this is one of the reasons why I want to charter, because the mayor could not veto it, which is fine. But my question then is, in current code, don't we have something, a section for employees or rights of employees or something?
Well, we certainly have this employee handbook that has a grievance procedure in it. And,
But,
it's all covered in there.
yeah, I would like to know what I want to say is kind of like, I can get what we're saying here, but I don't want to totally abandon this. The employees do need some type of lawful protection somewhere in code, be it either under the ethics, if it's someone can go after us for an ethics, but I would still like to just say it's unlawful. Don't even consider it. We should not be going to an ethics commission for someone thinking that, they were retaliated against. There is a proper grievance, which is fine, but
If I can circle back, I did find it in the code.
Okay,
when you're ready.
yeah.
So I will just say that I like this the way it is drafted. My only question is the very last part of 14-2, where it's talking about if an employee, an appointed official or employee found to have knowingly made false statement or false complaint under this provision shall be subject to discipline.
Gotcha.
Where's that discipline coming from? How is that defined?
That,
Employee handbook, is it under code?
it says the personnel policy and procedures of the, I think it was more related to the employee, and since we don't have control over the
Right.
employees,
So this protects the employees, which is why I like it.
what do you mean, like, the whole section? Okay,
All of it.
okay, I just wasn't sure if you would
Yeah.
say one or two or the whole thing, okay. Gotcha, yeah, no, it protects employees, that's the whole, the thing behind this, for this one.
Yeah, and I would, Steve, my only concern with your additions of 3 and 4, they don't seem to fit here.
Well, that's what I'm saying is the way this current resolution is written, it's solely focused on ethics. And I'm saying, no, you need something that talks about protections against retaliation from other things to include these types of things. And I wrote it in a way that mirrors the language for 1 and 2 under 14-1.
Maybe I better read what's in the code
Yeah.
when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is what was added. Retaliate against an individual. A covered individual may not retaliate against a person for reporting or participating in an investigation of a potential violation of the town of Mount Airy ethics law.
So again, that's very specific just to ethics.
Yeah.
And I would like to see something at the, as Councilmember Munder said, a legal protection that says it can't be retaliated against for other things,
Yeah,
not just
Like a
ethics.
whistleblower type.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
I'm just trying to think, would that be,
So what you could do is, if you added the things I suggested, you would simply change the title of 2021-5. It wouldn't just be for alleged ethics violations, you'd have to add in these other things. That's why I gave you a suggested title change.
oh, okay, gotcha.
It's a little wordy, but it captures what we're trying to do, what I would be trying to do.
So is that whole thing your title change?
Just the underlined portion
Underline.
is an insertion.
Regarding policies and procedures that may adverse health and safety.
So now you're doing both. You're protecting against ethics, and you're protecting against somebody raising a environment, safety, health issue and getting retaliated against for it.
What's this title? This one has 2 titles, right? Unlawful adverse employment action and false statements not protected.
No, the title is Protection from Retaliation. And there's a typo in that.
Yeah, there is.
There's basically, you're gonna have to create a new article. And that first part is, the
Oh,
article falls under,
okay.
and these 2 sections will have their own titles. I guess.
Policy, protection from retaliation, reporting concerns regarding policies and procedures that may get adverse.
I don't know that I like the wording that says that may impact the health and safety of employees.
That's fine, but that's the idea that I'm trying to accomplish. Well, actually, that's what you're trying to do. I mean, give you an example. Let's say Sam Smith works in the maintenance department and he cuts grass and he's riding a lawnmower and he thinks the lawnmower is unsafe. And it's, and it's a problem. And he goes to his supervisor and says, hey, this thing's unsafe. I read online, this thing's been recalled. And his boss says, You're fine, just go cut the grass. And then he complains and he brings it up the chain and doesn't get bonuses, he doesn't get promotions, all because he's raising a safety issue. And he has nowhere to go to get that adjudicated. That's what this is all about.
That makes sense. I think I was just misinterpreting it.
Or, a bad policy, someone's working on a town policy and it impacts, it's going to impact the public. And they say, no one else is seeing this, but this is not going to be safe for the public. Why are we doing this? And then they get suppressed and retaliated against. So this is, current, I don't want to say cutting edge thinking. It's not cutting edge anymore, but this is your safety culture, your organizational culture that says,
Right.
when you work here, we want you to come forth and give us suggestions and bring up issues, and that's part of how we operate. That's what this does. And then it protects them.
So if I can just make a suggestion, can we get a clean, Tom, would we be able to get a clean copy with the suggestions from Councilmember Demoter with 3 and 4?
Sure.
And then, I don't know if we could use your expertise on this title. I'm not in love with no offense, Councilmember, the title being that long, but
Exactly.
if we can cut down some of the words just to hit the main idea.
Yeah.
And then I have no problem redoing and re-meeting, and that way we can all see a clean copy and see everything all together. I think that would be a good idea. And then council members, as well as mayor, will bring up 4, but I think we have a good starting point for that. I think to protect what the ideas that Councilmember Munder brought forth is not to lose the value of the code of conduct. And I think, Councilmember, you have our words that will continue moving forward. I think, myself, I'll add it on there, and I think, the mayor will do the same. I think he realizes the importance of it as well. And so I'm at a really good stopping point for 5. If we can get a clean copy from Tom, we'll give him a little homework. And then we'll bring back 4 with the notion that we're going to create a code of conduct. We'll look at this as an ordinance, and we'll move forward from there. Does that make sense? Perfect.
Nope, I'm good.
Before we close out, Councilwoman Reed brought up that last sentence, and I was going to suggest that
In 5?
in C14-2, which is,
The discipline.
number 5,
Okay, policy and procedure.
down at the bottom, that last sentence that talks about discipline under applicable code provisions, which would be probably Chapter 13 in terms of ethics. And the town's personnel policies, I'm cool with that, but when it goes to in procedures manual, I don't know.
We can change it. I wasn't sure what the title of whatever we had was called. So we can add to it, like, the grievance, whatever, personnel policy.
We have a policy manual, but there's no enforcement in here, I don't believe.
Yeah, maybe I meant the employee handbook too, or something, yeah.
Yeah, we have the employee handbook, and it certainly talks about some enforcement issues. But we just, maybe as you're going through this, council member, talk to me and we'll figure out exactly what we're
Hold on.
working from.
You could just stop at discipline because it leaves it open-ended and then get rid of under applicable code and all the other things, right? Like, if you make a false complaint, you're going to be subject to discipline, period.
But
Yeah,
fine, or we just need to make sure we're talking about the right thing.
yeah. I mean, no, I get what you're saying, Councilwoman. I just want to make sure that it's not sure the discipline that will be taken, we're allowed to take, or it's reasonable. It's not just not, the discipline of the time. Like somebody gets disciplined differently for bringing up the same thing. It's the equal,
Yeah.
the consistency of the application of the discipline. That's what I was getting at. Not, I get what you're saying, but it's just like, I don't want people, as Councilman Demuda would say too, I want people to be treated equally and fairly across for the same infraction.
Does it go back to like the same situation with the code of conduct, meaning we don't have a disciplinary?
I think it just needs to be identified.
Identified what manual we usually, the employee handbook, I guess, has the discipline procedures and
Certainly
stuff.
the code does. The employee handbook talks about
So it would be the code.
discharging employees.
Code and the employee handbook
So let's
or
get
whatever.
this cleaned up as far as what I just discussed with Tom. I think he's good with that. I think if we can reach out, Councilmember, if we can get the right document
Yeah.
information to Tom so that he can give us a clean version for next time, I think we'll have a better idea what we're working with. And then I already talked about 21-4, so I don't need to repeat that. I'm good with that, and then we'll move forward. We'll see where we go there, moving forward on the agenda. All right. It is just after 7 o'clock, 7:02 maybe? 7:02, perfect. We'll go ahead and close this charter amendment workshop for 21-4 and 21-5. Thank you, Mount Airy, and have a great evening.
Lynn, are you going upstairs to the beautification? Yeah. Okay. Do you have keys locked up?
I did.
And let me give you this too. I've handed this out in the past.
Okay.
But I tried to define what a concern is.
Yeah,
I don't know if you would need that.
no, I do.
She may not like it.
Oh, that's great. I'll draft some up and shoot it to you.
What do you think of Bruce's soul covers album? I don't know, it's like, I saw the video of singing the Converse song. He looks like a Vegas lounge singer.
Exactly, it's like, or
That's
a,
what I'm telling you, it's like he's.
remember Bill Murray's thing on Saturday Night Live, the sleazy lounge? But he's not sleazy, but it's,
I know, and he's got the jacket.
he was trying to be